All right, we are going to get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. As you can see the title and the beautiful photo, it is called NORCs and New York, Naturally Occurring Retirement Communities in New York City through the lens and life of Mr. Nat Yalowitz. And he is right there on the screen. I want to thank you all for joining us today. My name is Ilana Kiefer. I'm the director at the Center for Healthy Aging at the New York Academy of Medicine. We are located in East Harlem, and I'm just so happy that you are all here. We have quite a large audience. We have 74 participants, and I'm sure a few more will trickle in as time goes on. So just as a few reminders that I'm sure you've heard about 4,000 times by now, please make sure that you are on mute. We wanted to make this an opportunity where we could see everyone and you can have an opportunity to ask questions at the end. But given that, just please make sure that we don't hear any background noise. As I said, we will have Q&A at the end, so keep your questions till then, and you can also use the chat feature. So we are going to I'm going to give you a couple of notes about who we are at NIAM. So next slide, please. So I can't ask for a show of hands because a lot of you have your cameras off, but I hope that many of you have heard of the New York Academy of Medicine. We are located right on 5th Avenue and 103rd Street. You can see our building here. And you can see here also that our vision for the organization is that every single person has the opportunity to live a healthy life. And the way that we do this is that we work to drive progress towards improved health through attaining health equity. And we do this through many different ways and with many different populations. But today specifically, this event is sponsored by the Center for Healthy Aging at the New York Academy of Medicine. Next slide. So you can see here that the Center for Healthy Aging we work to improve both the health and well-being of all aging populations, because of course, all of us are aging every single day, through both immediate and long-term systemic changes. Next click. We work on many different aspects of healthy aging, including socialization, physical well-being, financial security, perceptions of well-being and quality of life, functional ability, and of course, healthcare delivery and services. Next click. And we do this through many different ways. We convene various stakeholders who are working towards both policy and practice change. We really work with all different types of data, and that really kind of helps to direct both our planning and our policy. We also provide strategic assistance to many different organizations across the city and the state, and actually the country, that are working on similar projects and who can benefit from our expertise in healthy aging. And then we do our own research to really help contribute to the evidence base related to healthy aging. So I hope it's clear, and you'll learn a lot more over the next hour, why we were so happy to meet with Nat and meet with Nat's family and work with many of the other organizations and partners that you'll hear from on this really important project and work. So with that, I'm going to go, sorry, one more slide, Reggie. Okay, so this is what we're going to be doing today. I just gave you my little welcome, and then we're going to hear from Councilmember Eric Bottcher, where Penn South is in his district. Then you'll hear from me again to talk a little bit more about this project in detail. And then you'll get to hear from Nat's son, Billy Yalowitz, who will really tell you about his dad and about his life and his work. And then we'll hear from Karen Bassuk, who worked with Nat on the NORC and on other neighborhood NORCs. And then we'll talk about the kind of more archive and library aspect of this project. And we'll hear from Paul Thierman, who's our director of the library at NIAM. And then we're going to hear more about what's going on today with NORCs. First at JASA, and Ala Pliss will tell us more about that. And then we'll hear about some work that's going on in Harlem, and we'll hear from William Hamer at Harlem Advocates for Seniors, and Dr. Mia Oberlink, who is at VNS Health, who is doing some exciting research and work on kind of a different angle of NORCs in Harlem. And then if we have time, we will take some Q&A. So with that, I will turn it over to Councilmember Bottcher to say a few words.
Hi, everybody. It's so great to see everyone. So many familiar faces, so many friends. I really appreciate this invitation and this opportunity to talk about something that's so important to me, to us, to all of New York. I often say that people come to New York for the first time, and like many of us, we weren't born in New York. We came to New York and we just kind of walk around and appreciate how amazing it is without ever really taking the time to understand how it became so amazing and how so many of these great things that we enjoy here came to be, and how things weren't always this way. One of those great things is Penn South and the NORC movement, but also these great things didn't just happen. They happened because people like fought hard for them, and worked and toiled for many, many years to make them happen. And one of those people was Nat Yalowitz, who at Penn South inspired the NORC movement. And I think when the International Ladies Garment Workers Union created Penn South, when they created it for their members and for others to have affordable housing in the vicinity of their workplaces, I imagine they didn't envision NORCs. Right? That probably wasn't part of their thinking at the time. They couldn't have predicted the NORC movement, but the NORC movement is one of the most wonderful parts about Penn South. In addition to Penn South being really the heart and soul of Chelsea and the middle class and working class core of Chelsea and the district I represent, the NORC movement that was born out of Penn South has helped untold numbers of people around the country live rich lives later in life, healthy, comfortable, rich lives later in life. So I see it as my job as an elected official one of my jobs is to ensure that, number one, that Penn South and the Penn South NORC exists strong for future generations to enjoy and experience, strong and affordable, limited equity, but also to help expand these services to even more places. Because the truth is that in the United States, fewer and fewer people are retiring with enough money in the bank or security in the bank to retire and live comfortable lives throughout the retirement. And it's actually a big problem that we're going to be reckoning with in our country, with the decline of pensions and many things that people used to rely on. So places like Penn South with NORC programs are going to be even more essential. But in order to support something and strengthen something and to preserve it, you really have to understand the history of it and how it came to be. So that's why this is such an exciting forum. And I'm really excited to be here with all of you and to hear from Nat Yalowitz's family and to so many who worked from him and learned from him. So thank you again for having me, everyone. I also live across the street from Penn South, so that's a little personal angle there. I enter the lottery every 5 years. We're going to keep doing it. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Botcher. We know how busy you are and really appreciate you taking the time to be here. And I did not know that you lived right across the street, so that's even more special. Thank you so much, and for all the work that you do for the city.
Thank you.
Just as a couple of more housekeeping reminders, There is closed captioning available. It should come up on the top of your screen. And then also some people like to see lots of different faces on the screens. Others like to see a big box of the speaker. You can choose. So you can actually, if you hover your mouse to the top right, it'll say view, and you can have either speaker view or gallery view. So it's up to you. So I just want to talk for a few moments about why we're here and what this project is. So I know Molly Krakowski. I think she's here somewhere. Maybe she can wave. I don't see her right on my screen. Molly works at JASA, and you'll be hearing a lot more about JASA later. And Molly, of course, knew Nat from all of his work and his son, Billy. And Nat and Billy came to her because as Nat was kind of going through all of his papers and materials from his decades of work, he realized that he wanted to really have somewhere that it could really be archived for in perpetuity. And Molly working at JASA, that was not kind of in JASA's wheelhouse to do that, but contacted me because she knew that the New York Academy of Medicine, in addition to doing aging research, also happens to have a library. And Paul Thierman will tell you a lot more about the archive process of digitizing Nat's work. But we thought that this was really a perfect opportunity for NIAM to both promote this model of the NORC, which we know is, time tested for being a really successful model for healthy aging, and then all the work that we do at the Center for Healthy Aging, specifically focused on New York City and aging in place in New York City, and NORCs are such a wonderful model for that, in addition to NIAM's library that we have. So Molly and myself and Paul and Billy came together and met on a quite regular basis to figure out what we could do to really both archive Nat's work and then also not only thinking kind of backwards, but also for today and tomorrow in terms of the NORC model, which is why we brought on other speakers to really talk about where the NORC model is going and growing, really in huge thanks to Nat's work. And of course, we wanted to share all this information with the public. So that's why we are here today. And really, this is a celebration and an honor and an education as well. So now, for more of that, I'm going to turn it over to Billy Yalowitz, Nat's son, to tell you a lot more about his dad.
Thank you, Ilana. And I want to thank you and the Center for Healthy Aging and Paul Thierman of NIAM, who everyone will hear from, Molly from JASA, and also Christina Diaz of the Penn South Program for Seniors, who made the match actually for Nat and my brothers and I to meet up with NIAM and to create this event and the archive that you'll be hearing about. Each of you has been very generous and thoughtful in creating this event and in honoring Nat Yalowitz's work. I'm speaking today on behalf also of my brothers, Daniel Yalowitz and Steve Yalowitz, who are both here to give a brief narrative of our father's life. And I'm really honored to speak about him and very pleased to see friends and family from around the country and also from you in the Elders in Housing and Social Work and associated networks who are carrying on the good work that my father was so involved with. So here's a brief narrative of his life. Nat Yalowitz was born in the Bronx in 1930. And here's some photos of him. Born to Morris and Fanny Yalowitz, who were refugees from the anti-Semitic violence of the Russian Empire coming here in 1905. When Nat was born, he was born just 2 months after the stock market crash of 1929. He grew up in poverty during the Great Depression. As a young boy, Nat found his place in the world in the youth groups of the left-wing movement, in summer camps, storefront Yiddish Marxist cultural and educational programs, young people's choirs, all with a dedication to working class interracial community building and a joyful solidarity. While still in his teen years in the 1940s, Nat began to apprentice in the labor movement, speaking on street corners and helping with union publications. The principles that he learned in his early years through personal experience and firsthand political action infused him with a burning and lifelong commitment to replace a system of rampant racial and economic injustice toward a world that would work for everyone. Nat's work took many turns over his long career. As a young social worker, he worked with children whose lives were crushed by poverty and racism, fostering job training and alternatives to gang warfare. He created innovative programs in settlement houses, civil rights organizations, community action projects, housing cooperatives, and trade unions throughout New York City and beyond. With our mother, Wendy Cantor Yalowitz, who died in 2021, likewise a devoted social worker fighting to change the conditions of the lives of poor and working class young people in the city's public schools. My brothers and I were raised in communities that grew from the soil of their shared commitments. These included the Penn South Housing Cooperative in the Garment District of Manhattan and at the Golden's Bridge Cooperative Colony in rural northern Westchester. I should say here that my parents were both at the forefront of campaigns to sustain Penn South as a limited equity cooperative. Several of the other Mitchell-Lama and similar cooperatives in New York City, as many of you will know, have gone to a market model. And Penn South is one of the few that is still a cooperative. And my brothers and I cleaned out the apartment just on Friday that the family had been living in for 61 years, where my parents were we were all original cooperators. And now it will be passed on to the next family who needs it. And we're very proud of that as a shared legacy with Penn South Cooperators, but also with my family. My father loved his New York City. He worked jobs in each of its boroughs and lived in 3 of them. He knew nearly a century of its people and neighborhoods. My brothers and I loved going around the city with him. He seemed to have a story for any corner of it, from where he played stickball and roasted potatoes on the street corners of the Bronx to an intimate knowledge of where to get the best bialys and pickles on the Lower East Side. Nat's work over time was increasingly visionary and creative, determined and effective. He listened carefully to people's stories and to their hopes. He built programs that redressed the dehumanizing effects of a profit-driven economic system on both material and personal levels. These programs often integrated the arts, music, visual arts, film, theater, movement. In this, he drew from the well of his early experiences of the left-wing movement, where culture was deeply woven into community organizing. In the last phase of his career that we're focusing on today, Nat worked with senior citizens, beginning with retired garment workers of the ILGWU, the Ladies Garment Workers Union at Penn South, who were facing social isolation and treated as irrelevant as they grew old. Nat was passionate in his commitment to fight for dignified housing conditions for these elders. It's not lost on my brothers and I that when our father founded the NORC at Penn South, many of the elders living there, like his own parents, had as children been driven from their homes in their lands of origin. He fought for these elders to have a choice about where to live in their final years, not another forced move for them, so that they could remain if they wished in the communities they helped to build. The NORC model, developed on a basis of cooperative economics, was a kind of fulfillment of Nat's lifetime of work. At its core were programs in the arts and oral history and self-expression for elders. He worked tirelessly to develop the NORC model throughout New York City, eventually seeding it across the United States and as far as China, where he was invited to speak to help with the development of the NORC model there. As you'll hear from others today, Nat's work enabled thousands of elders to continue to live independently in their homes. Throughout his working life, a continuing thread was a depth of commitment to fighting for lives of meaning, hope, and respect for every group of people, especially for poor and working class people of every race, religion, and national origin. Nat continued his activism into the last months of his life, speaking at rallies for local politicians who sought out his support and sharing his experience with younger activists. Our dad was an active and caring father and husband, never giving up on being close to my brothers and me, and to Wendy, his beloved wife of 70 years. Our dad had a huge heart. He lived to make the world a better place for us and for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Billy. And again, Paul will talk about this later, but we did have the pleasure of getting to meet Nat, and that just makes it that much richer for this event. But before we get to Paul, and thank you again, Billy, for just giving us that incredible biography and context for your dad. I want to now bring up Karen Bassick, who is the former director of Penn South Program for Seniors, who is going to talk about her time and her work with Nat.
Thank you. Just trying to figure out how I get to be bigger than my little space here.
If you press view on the top right, then it'll say speaker. But we see you well, Karen. You look good.
Okay, good enough. Anyway, I feel really pleased and really proud that you chose to include me in this program. Because NORC Supportive Service Programs was probably my favorite job I ever had, and something that I felt was most meaningful in trying to work with older adults, which is where I have had my professional life centered. But in thinking about Nat, I kind of came up with a few major adjectives. One of them was progressive. Nat came from a real progressive background, as you heard from Billy, and it really helped, I think, inform him and help enlighten him as to ways that he would want to create communities that would help all the folks that he would be dealing with. And just to add, in progressive, Nat was 9 years old when my mother was a counselor at Wochica, Workers Children's Camp. And when I told her that I was going to be joining Penn South Program for Seniors, she said, "Oh, Nat Yalowitz is there." And we were good friends. I think Nat was 9 years old or so at the time, but my mom was the choral leader and had really wonderful thoughts about him. But again, it helped me understand the progressive background that we both shared. And when I joined Nat in Penn South Program for Seniors, and I told him about my mom, it was an immediate and wonderful connection for us. And I think I really benefited from that connection for the 8 years that we worked together. He was an advocate. He really believed what he believed in, and he was going to make sure that that happened. He was an organizer. He was a visionary. Nat saw the larger picture. You know, he was not just looking at casework for the individuals that lived in Penn South. He was not just looking for seniors that lived in Penn South, but he really believed in community strengthening. He saw a bigger picture of what that meant. And he worked on multiple levels. He worked with the board of managers at the co-op. He worked with the management of the co-op. He was obviously with David Smith, the co-founder of Penn South Program for Seniors, but also made sure that it wasn't just their voices or the voices of the Health and Social Services Committee of the board, but also encouraged and incorporated the views of many of the residents there in either advisory boards or other kinds of groups to make sure that their voices got heard. So again, for my belief, he really learned how to strengthen a community. He also didn't believe in it just, as I said, to be just for seniors. While this was a Penn South program for seniors, it was also a very much of an intergenerational program. We at Penn South Program for Seniors, when I was there, worked with our volunteers, and we had so many wonderfully educated residents in the community to help give them an opportunity to shine again and to share with the others what they knew in their professional careers or in their interests. People who ran the men's group or ran the women's group or helped support the intergenerational groups over at the elementary school across the street, reading to the children there, doing work with the teenagers in the community to help them not only to enrich their own lives, but also to help support the older adults who needed that assistance. So it wasn't just the professional care, but NORC supportive service programs. And I wanted to sort of make sure we keep that in mind. NORCs are the naturally occurring retirement communities, the buildings, the complexes themselves that aged in place. But NORC supportive service programs was really what Penn South Program for Seniors helped to really develop and to define. And that was a very much of a health and social service model that would help on multiple levels of being able to have that community members feel that it was their program and that they were engaged. So people would come down for exercises or free ticket or low cost tickets to the theater, or having lectures from one of their own residents who was a history teacher and now was teaching that, or taking classes in quilting, or taking other arts classes, or painting a mural that we did that was done by, I don't remember exactly, but a lot of different folks from the ages of 4 to 93. We painted a wonderful mural, unfortunately no longer at Penn South, but it was an adventure for the older folks and younger folks to have a conversation as to what did Penn South mean to them. And at different ages, obviously it meant a whole lot of a different idea, and those got incorporated into the mural. He was.
And Karen, 1 minute.
Sure. Okay. He helped build community of all ages by also harnessing resources in the community. From we had psychiatry from, it was then, now I'm blanking. It was St. Vincent's Hospital psychiatry program. We were able to get daily money management. We did a social adult day program. We did programs for vision impaired. What we saw, we addressed, and what the community came forward and said that we needed. Nat helped bring that to us and say, let's work on creating these programs that can help all of the residents of Penn South Program for Seniors, as well as creating the model that has gone on to be able to be now replicated in many, many other communities, both in NORCs, in naturally occurring retirement communities, and in neighborhood NORCs, all of which helped by the design that had been originally worked out at Penn South Program for Seniors. I could go on and on, but one last thing I would love to just add is that Nat was definitely an advocate. And when in 1994, the funding for the state legislation came down and under Cuomo and had gotten passed, and to fund state NORCs and city NORCs. But then when Pataki came in 1995 and took away that money, Nat helped organize all the NORC programs to send out 100,000 postcards to not only to Pataki, but to all the councilmen, state assemblymen and state senators, and that money got restored. So it was really a great example of what advocacy can do for communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And it also just shows the importance of so many different types of people in developing and pushing these models, both tenants, leaders, and professional staff, and council members and the like, to make this happen. So thank you, Karen, for your perspective. I'm now going to turn it over to Dr. Paul Thierman, who is the director of the library at NIAM.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me share my screen. All right, very good. Well, I really enjoyed meeting Nat Yalowitz. Ilana Kiefer promoted a visit to the library on October 7th last year, and Ilana, Nat's son Billy, and I sat and talked for a while. And then Arlene Shaner, our historical collections librarian, met with Nat and Billy in our rare book room. Knowing Nat's interests and work, she showed him our scrapbooks on aging, which dated back to 1901. We had hoped for a return visit and had also planned to visit Nat in his apartment when we learned of his death in January 2023. So another visit was not to be. Nonetheless, Nat's legacy lives on at the Academy Library as he donated some of his materials to us. Today, I'm going to give you a sense of the materials that Nat left. I also want to thank not only Nat, but also his son Billy, Billy's brothers Daniel and Steve, Ilana Kiefer, and Molly Krakowski of JASA, as our discussions over the last several months made this donation and this event possible. Before going deeper into Nat's materials, I did want to introduce the NIAM Library. Along with NIAM itself, we were founded in 1847, and last year we celebrated our 175th year. The library was set up to provide access to medical books and journals to NIAM's fellows, the physicians who founded the Academy to improve the practice of medicine and the state of public health in New York City and beyond. Some 30 years on, in 1878, the Academy opened its library to all users, not just to its own fellows, and we remain open to the public to this very day. While most of our collections are comprised of books and journals, we have significant holdings of archives and manuscripts, and it's to those collections that Nat materials are added. So what do we find in the Nat Yalowitz papers? Some marvelous things. One thing that caught my eye was this 1985 study that Nat and others did on the problems and needs of senior citizens residing at Penn South. This is one of the earliest documents I saw in the collection. Many of the other documents I saw are Nat thinking through and reflecting on the NORC experience at Penn South, such as NORC programs are owner-friendly, growing older at home, challenges and opportunities, faces and voices, growing older in America, the NORC experience, who speaks for who, the role and function of seniors in a NORC supportive services program, and history of the Penn South program for seniors and Penn South Social Services, Inc. Nat works was noted through Penn South's own publications, such as the Penn South News from March 1987. Sorry, I have that out of order. In the picture, Nat is at the extreme right. And in their book, Penn South 50th Anniversary 1962 to 2011, Nat is uppermost. Oh, I'm sorry, I have this out of order. There we go. Nat is uppermost on the left. So you can see him down in the very bottom. Some of the collections are signs of appreciation for Nat's work, such as these from the Borough of Manhattan and from the New York State Senate. But underlying all of this work is Nat's professional expertise and training. I want to finish the overview of the collection with this image of Nat's New York State license as a clinical social worker. Here at the library, we're still working through Nat's papers. When we're done, they'll be available for anyone to consult in our reading room, and we're planning on making them available digitally as well. As I finish, I wanted to acknowledge the help of Arlene Shaner, our historical collections librarian, who both hosted Nat last October, as I mentioned, and here's some pictures of that visit, and helped with this presentation. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul. And again, I was witness to Nat's visit, both where he was able to talk, to give us an oral history, and to have the tour of the NIAM library. And it was a really special day for us, and I know it was also for him. And again, I'll give you both mine and Paul's contact information at the end of the event, so that if you do want to view the archives at a future date, you absolutely can do that. So now I'm just going to keep us moving forward, and I'm now going to introduce Ala Pliss, who is the current Senior Director of NORC Supportive Services at JASA.
Thank you and good afternoon. So I have to say I had a great pleasure to know Nat years ago. The first time when I started at NORC one of the NORC program in Brooklyn, so I had the chance to meet with him and to also to hear a lot of the great idea of the NORC programs. So that ideas and legacy is very well continued right now. And as of now, more than 50 NORC programs are open their door for the older adults in their community in New York State or in New York State. And under JAS umbrella, there are 12 NORC programs that I really would like to share a little bit about those NORC programs that we currently have under JAS umbrella. So the whole idea of the NORC started here, I mean, not so late, I think somewhere in 1980, when the first time the term NORC was heard and was mentioned, and it was referred to neighborhood or housing development that originally built or designated to all ages, but where over the time residents gradually age in place. So the original requirement was that 50% of the residents of the development must be 60 plus. Recently, the current requirement slightly changed, and now it's saying that at least 40% or at least 250 of the residents of the apartment building are older adults. And another requirement that the majority of the elderly residing in the NORC should be the low or moderate income. So now we're speaking about two different types of NORC. We called it classic NORC, that originally it started, that the building of cluster buildings, and another term that we heard today, it's a neighborhood NORC, the residential dwelling or group of residential dwelling in geographically defined neighborhood. Under JAS umbrella that we have 12 NORC programs, 11 of them, they represent that classic NORC concept, and one NORC program that we consider as neighborhood NORC. Out of those 11, I'm really proud to say 3 of them, they were the first pioneers program, 10 pilot, among those 10 pilot programs that were opened, and they started in 1994. So it was Warbur's Cares for Seniors, Trump Outreach Program for Seniors, and of course, Penn South Program for Seniors. So those three programs that were originally started, and also Karen, so it was a great pleasure to work with you at that time to start all the services together for different NORC locations. There are differences between the NORC programs. The difference is where they're located. It's in the different boroughs. So we currently under JAS, we have 5 NORC programs in Brooklyn, 5 in Manhattan, 1 in the Bronx, 1 in Far Rockaway. And also the difference between what development they're working with. We have programs that are in NYCHA, in Mitchell houses, in private houses. So like you could imagine, that's such a big diversity and variety of group of people that we're working with. The size of the NORCs also could be very much different. So if we know Cobb City provides services to the older adults in 33 buildings. And we have a NORC program that provides the services in 2 buildings. So that is very much the difference is. And of course, this financial support that the program receives. But all of them, they have all the same key component. And this is key components make the NORC program very unique and very special. So what is the main component? And of course, the partnership with the housing management. The housing management who share the mission of NORC, who play, an important role of day-to-day operation. And another one is the key component is interdisciplinary team. We work together. It's a team who provides the services, social services and nursing services. Those 2 professional teams work together on the community, within the community, who understands the needs of community and brings the services to those members. And I believe it was mentioned before that NORC, it's a residence ownership. It's NORC program that are resident driven. Who knows better than the people who live in the community what the needs are, what the services are needed, who their neighbor is, how to help that neighbor, and how to work together with other service provider and local legislators. So currently under those 12 programs that we have in JASA, we have 6 NORC programs that receive funds from New York State Office for the Aging and New York City Aging, or some of you know as the Department for the Aging. They started in a different time, but again, those programs like Vorbas that started in 1993 and Drums United in 1993, plus Penn South program for seniors. JASA started collaboration with Penn South program for seniors in 2005. And we have 6 other NORC programs that are funded privately or through New York City Council grants. And those NORC programs are Cadman Tower, 1199, Riverton Square, RNA, St. Martin Tower, and Far Rockaway Neighborhood NORC. And I see we have some representative from those NORC community who are very strong advocate for those NORC programs. And I'm so grateful that you're joining us today. So thank you. The services that
And
NORC
you
provide.
1 minute.
Oh my God,
I
I
know,
really need
time
more,
flies.
but okay. Okay, so the services that NORC provide could be identified as the core services. The core services, like every NORC program, has to be in compliance with. It's a social services and nursing services. And then so we have a chance to give group socialization and recreation, depend on the budget level, on how much money we receive and what we are offering. And it's a very great opportunity to work together with volunteer and the community leaders. It's no questions about that, because as most of you know that every NORC program has a small staff, but we have a great vision, we have a great mission, and that's why the role of their leaders, community leaders, and I call them the volunteers, it's so much important to get the support. So Penn South Program for Seniors is a great example of the strong partnership between Penn South Social Services, the housing management, VNS nursing, VNS service provider, nursing schools, social work schools, and the volunteers of the NORC program. So thank you again. Thank you, Lana, for giving me a chance to be here today to share. This is a great concept of the NORC programs. And thank you, Nat's family, for having such a great dad who was really very creative, very talented, and who was a real social worker. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ala, and thank you for all the work that you're doing with the many NORCs that you're overseeing throughout the city. So now let's go to the future. And I'm going to bring on William Hamer and Mia Oberling to talk about the work that they're doing in Harlem in planning for NORCs going forward.
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is William Hamer. Hi, Mia. Good to see you. We're going to kind of just give you an overview of some of the work that we're currently doing. I'm going to give you a brief snapshot of some of the history of the work that I've been involved in and how that has led to where we are now in terms of replicating a neighborhood NORC program in Central Harlem. So I'm the executive director of an organization called Harlem Advocates for Seniors. We have as our mission to empower, engage, and support older adults and to work to build an age-friendly community. We have a vision to have a Harlem community where all older adults can live and thrive. And that's what we basically have put our teeth on. Currently, we operate programs at several sites in Harlem in cooperation with tenant associations and also building managements at 3 different locations. But what I want to talk about today, and what I'm so exciting to be on this call, is that predating the establishment of the Harlem Advocates for Seniors nonprofits, which took place in 2016, I have to go all the way back to my first introduction to the NORC program, going back to 2009. It was at that time I was the director of senior services for a major nonprofit group in Harlem called Abyssinian Development Corporation. And as the director of senior services, we ran several community programs. We had housing programs as well. But it was during that tenure that we also applied and were able to receive funding to establish a neighborhood NORC. And we were able to partner with the Fan Fox Foundation. We also were engaged with the Tuttle Fund. And we ran a very, very successful neighborhood NORC program where we had all of the components that I think Ala just talked about. I was so happy to be following her because she actually gave you the description of all of the services. So we had the nurse, we had the case manager, we had the social worker, we had the activity coordinator. So we were in a very, very terrific place when we had that neighborhood NORC, and it was so very well received. Unfortunately, we were not able to sustain that project back then because of some challenges with ADC. And so currently, right now, the Central Harlem community does not have a neighborhood NORC. And it was so interesting that somehow, I mean, I continued in the work after we left ADC. I continued, that's when we started Harlem Advocates for Seniors. But about a year ago, through a very interesting connection that occurred with the Nick Cannon Foundation and, Fan Fox, we were able to re-engage with the Fan Fox Foundation. And I have to say, think so highly of the Fan Fox Foundation because Julio and Lauren have been colleagues and friends for so many years, and they've actually known the quality of the work that we did. And I'm sure many of you know that. So we basically were able to engage with them. And it was at that point over a year ago that it was like, okay, we need another NORC in Harlem. Right now, William Hamer, you've got an organization, you've got a very solid footprint in the Central Harlem community. We know your work. Let's see what we can do to partner and see if we can get another neighborhood NORC. So that's where it all started about a year ago. As a result of that, we were able to receive some funding. Obviously, I'm going to turn this over to Mia Oberlink. And it's so interesting because this goes back to 2009, and here we are now almost 13 years later. I'm working with some of the same people to replicate this program. And I think it's just such an honor to be in that position, and it's great to also see so many seasoned individuals on this call. So we've all been around a minute or two. So we were able to get funding to begin the process of, taking a look at the needs and issues and concerns of older adults in the Central Harlem community. And obviously, for those who know anything about Mir and the VNS Research Department, the first phase in that program is to do a survey. So you've got to put a survey questionnaire together. You have to launch that survey, and you've got to put it out in the community so you can really get some concrete data, because it is the data and the outcomes of that survey that will actually drive the services of the NORC. So we've been working on that process now almost a year. We almost getting ready to put the final touches on that questionnaire and, launch phase one, which will be to do that survey. I'm so excited about that because in the process of doing the survey, we did a number of community focus groups. We met with individuals and other stakeholders in the Central Harlem community. And the feedback that we got was just so incredible because the people who remembered the NORC from back in 2009, 10, 11, they said, oh my God, we really need another program like that, And again, we understand, and I've worked very closely with my partners at senior centers and all of the other providers, but there are so many of our older adults who don't go to senior centers. We all know that. So there is a place that folks need to be able to go to get those services, to be engaged and feel supported. And that's where I think the neighborhood NORC really kind of, fits that, fits that void. So right now, as I mentioned, we are on the verge of launching our questionnaire and survey. And with that, I'm going to just kind of step back and kind of just ask Mia. I know Mia is here to talk about a few other things, but Mia Oberlink is working with her and her partner, Alexis. we're right there. So we are so excited to be launching phase 1. And then ultimately, if everything lines up, if everything works according to script, we'll be moving into phase 2 with hopefully a program implementation of a neighborhood NORC in central Harlem. And that's as much as I wanted to say. Again, I did not have the great pleasure of meeting Nat Yalowitz, but certainly I know his name, and I want to give my regards and thanks to his family and his children for all of the great work that he did. Quick story that I have to, I think, throw out, in that during that process back then, I had the incredible opportunity to meet a name of a person who I'm sure will ring a bell with some of you. That was Freda Vladik. I had an opportunity to meet Freda and to spend almost an hour or two with her. And it was such a spellbinding hour to just sit and talk with her about the NORC and talk about her, how she saw, some of the work that needed to be done. So again, this is something that is dear to my heart. I'm excited about having the opportunity to do it again. And so Mia, I'm going to just kind of step back and let you talk a little bit about, where we are with the survey and your other items on your list. Thank you.
Thanks, William. I see that we're running out of time, so I'll be very brief. Well, we've worked with maybe 12.5 organizations, many of them NORCs in the city, to conduct a survey of the older adults who live in those communities, because as somebody pointed out before, the experts on aging in a community are the older people themselves, and we like to learn about people's perceptions and experiences in the community in order to drive whatever development of services eventually happens in that community, so that it's anchored in the reality that people are living in that community. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing in Harlem. And as William mentioned, in order to inform the development of our questionnaire, we held a series of focus groups with providers and leaders in the community, as well as several key informant interviews to find out, what are people thinking in the community? What are they feeling? What's going on? What are the main issues and concerns? And that was extremely useful. And our questionnaire is very much based on what people told us. And I have to say that I was a little bit surprised by some of the things that we learned. The most surprising thing to me was that, and remember, these are leaders and providers in the community who said that they don't really know where to go in order to get the kind of one-stop services that their constituents need. And I found that rather surprising, because these are people who are professionals in the same way, and they didn't really know each other. And I think one of the things that we're really going to try to do is provide eventually that one-stop shop that everybody is going to know about. And there's never going to be a question of, well, where do I go? What's the phone number? It's not going to be like that, hopefully, once we get this neighborhood NORC going. We also learned some things about particular populations that are living in Harlem right now. And it's a changing demographic. Now we have more Hispanic residents, and we have more Asian residents, and a lot of other younger people, maybe wealthier people. It's really very much in flux. But we learned a lot about several populations, as I said, one of which is veterans and the sort of needs that veterans have returning once they are leave their service. There are also a lot more LGBTQ older adults there, so we learned about some of their issues, and we also learned about what was the third?
The formerly incarcerated.
Yes, the formerly incarcerated. And we have incorporated questions into our survey questionnaire for each of those groups in addition to everybody else who lives in Harlem. And it was very interesting to see what particular issues those three groups have that maybe others do not have. And so we're going to try to get to those concerns in addition to the more general concerns that older adults have in the community. So we are going to launch the survey very soon. It's going to be on paper and electronically. And once we get all of our, they're all in, all of the surveys have been filled out, we will do an analysis and we'll develop several reports based on the data. And then that data is accessible to anybody in Harlem who wants to develop services for older adults in the community. So, you know, it'll be free information for everyone there. So we hope that we will let everybody know to the extent we can when it's launched. And if you serve any seniors in Harlem, we encourage you to ask them to take the survey. And we would love to get maybe around 400 to 500 respondents. And we will keep you informed about what and when we will do it.
Fabulous.
Terrific.
Thank you so much, and very eager and curious to see what the results hold. And I think a lot of people on here can help with that survey dissemination. So you can go through me and then I can share it with others about that. It is 5 o'clock, so I do want to wrap up. I'm sorry we don't have time for Q&A, but I'm going to put both my and Paul's email addresses on the screen. And of course, if you need to ask questions of the other speakers, we can certainly direct you there. We really want to, you know, hope that this continues the conversation about the important role of NORCs, both in New York City and beyond. And again, just want to thank everyone that you heard speak, everyone behind the scenes that made this happen. Thank you all for joining us, and you can follow us on Twitter if you would like. We hope to hear from you, and thank you all so much. Have a lovely rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you all.